Welcome to the Outer Realm with MicheleDerocher and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM from beautiful New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who have been a part of our journey for the last 5 years. So thank you, Folgers. We couldn't do it without you, nor would we want to. Also, big thank you to Justin Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, for his contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro you just heard. He is an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite music streaming platforms. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram, does great commission pieces, however, also specializes in the horror genre. So tonight, guys, we are bringing back, of course, as my guest co-host, Wayne Mallows. We all love him, right? Yeah. And we are going to have another open mic. We're going to pick up where we left off last week. Now, I see we're having a little bit of issues right now with, I think, Facebook. So I'm just trying to rectify that as we speak. 1 second, and we'll see if we can get that moving or not. Okay, so let's just see if she comes up. I think it's coming up. I think it's trying. So for those of you who are there we go. For those of you who are on there, here we go. So here we go. Without further ado, da, 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 da. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
And we've got some big hello, Janie. Just giving her hello. Say hey, Tamara. There we go. Oh, Z-Sun's in the house. Hello. And hold on, making our way in. Patsy. Hi, Patsy. All right. Keep going. Make our way down. And Heidi. Hello, Heidi. Hello. How are you? Always great to see you here. Hello, Teresa. Still coming down. My God, you guys are all in here early. Geez, if I were known the party already started, I'd have hung out with you guys. I remember guys Wayne, when these two get together. Oh, it's a daily occurrence, believe me.
Oh, there's shenanigans.
I know. I keep saying we need to do like a YouTube channel, and then you get to really see what daily life is like.
It would be obscene.
Well,
especially when I'm doing plumbing.
Yeah, it's always interesting. That's for sure. We never know how the day is going to go. I
do.
Okay. I know. It's a journey.
You could call it that. To the plumbing store and back.
Yeah. But I'm gonna leave that one right there.
Yeah.
So we have some great topics picked out tonight. And a while back I did a guest show on Paranormal Heart podcast with a really good friend of mine. And hello, Jerry. Yes, Michelle, in case I didn't give you the full hello. Anyway, it was on werewolves, primarily in Canada for that one. We call them the Loup Garou here. So we're going to get into that a little bit as we move along. But I wanted to touch on some of the little tidbits of stuff that we have that's going on also, which has been a little bit of crazy. So let's start with the Pope. So there's a lot of stuff. No, I know. I'm kind of like, all right, where do we go with this? But hear me out. So there's been stuff all over the internet with respects to, is he passed already? Is he still in the hospital? Some people are saying, no, he passed today or yesterday, but it won't be announced until next week. And of course, apparently it's supposed to coincide with the same day that the new leader at the helm in the US has something big that he's going to be putting out there. So it kind of takes me back to, is that a distraction or what the heck is really going on? But here's the kicker. Yeah, Heidi says, opening them doors, maybe. But here's the kicker. Maybe I might lend you a theory. There was a witness who essentially said that one of the last things he had made mention of or said was for everybody to be worshiping Lucifer to find true enlightenment. I'm kind of like, what? What did I just hear? Or what did I just read? And apparently there's a video of this. And he says it, apparently. So I am looking for this video. I'm going to look for this and see if this is actually correct or not. But if that's the case, it sure lends to a lot of things to belief systems that, all of these changes at the Vatican and so on. And being a Jesuit, of course, there's a long history with the history of the Jesuits as well, which, sort of go against the traditions of Catholicism. You thoughts?
Thoughts on that? Ooh.
I know.
I don't know. It's like
Heck.
I don't research like you do. I just have Wayne's feelings on the topic for Tuesday or whatever day it is.
I say go crazy.
let's not go crazy because then the guys with the white jackets show up. It's like ever since I was not a little kid, but a young man, much younger than me now. I referred to this plane of existence as the prison planet. And people are like, "Oh, it's so negative. Why do you think that way? It's a beautiful place." I'm like, I don't know. Everything's trying to eat everything else. It's not a pretty place. Nature's harsh.
Mm-hmm.
But I heard recently, and I don't know where I heard it. Like I meander through various places, and I heard that something along the lines of, that we worship the wrong God. Basically that the God that we worship has sort of been slipped in. And he's not a very nice individual, or it, she, him, her, is not a very nice individual. And in fact, it is a prison planet, and that Lucifer, the devil, is the warden. And I was like, oh, that's like 35 years after I kind of went, hey, I think it's a prison planet. It's kind of like, oof, pie in the face moment,
I know. See, all this stuff's coming up, and I love it. Heidi says, don't go to the light. It's a trap.
Exactly.
Right. And Sherry says, maybe everything is backwards. Devil good, God bad. Who knows? Lucifer, the light bearer. How many times have we heard this?
Me. I've said that.
You've said it.
I hate
We've
being
talked about it.
Yeah.
We've had other guests mention it briefly. And I'm kind of like, Well,
wow. I remember when I was researching with you and on my own for book number 4, and I was delving into a lot of stuff, and it's always said that history is written by the winners, right? And I have no evidence. I wasn't there. I wasn't at ground zero, right? So, but like, what if the fallen angels were actually trying to do good, and they got caught trying to do good, and they were, oh, you're back and you're gone, right? What if that was actually the case? And I'm not saying that it is. And I'm just like playing the devil's advocate, right? What if it was?
Well, I have to tell you that there's some places when I just did a show, yesterday with Beyond the Outer Realm with Caroline Aderola, and we were talking a little bit about some stuff. We didn't get to everything. We're going to do a part 2 because there's so much information we're going to talk about. But one of the things, the pictures I showed was 34 of the most satanic places on the planet.
Mm.
And one of them happened to be Notre Dame Cathedral.
Mm.
So you think to yourself, what is a place like that? I mean, how is this amazing place known? And the Statue of Liberty, too, by the way, Heidi, yes, is one of them. So it's like, how does this amazing location become known as one of the most satanic places in the world?
Well, it's hidden in
And
plain sight, right?
well, does anybody ever kind of wonder why so much aid from some questionable organizations came to? I mean, it was heartbreaking when it was on fire. A lot of people came, to its rescue. A lot of people touched a lot of people, myself included, because I've been there and I spent a good amount of time there. But when you look at, and I'm not gonna blabber off any names, but when you look at some of the people who put out the most money under the condition that it was their people who did the repair, they had to be the ones to approve it. And they're now known for certain types of activity. The pieces of the puzzle, the connect the dots game just kind of starts looking awful good for that case. Just gonna leave that right there too. But food for thought, right?
Like I said, it's you want it to be invisible, hide it in plain sight.
Mm-hmm. Truth for sure. So, okay, we've taken care of that puppy.
Nice.
Yeah, that one's all kind of like done out of the way.
Look at the Templars were put to death behind Notre Dame. That was a pretty horrific thing. And then you look at where, and I don't want to get sidetracked, okay, but look at where where the accident of Princess Diana happened in the tunnel. On the 13th pillar, where the Temple of Diana used to be. Right?
Get me started, because that's another rabbit hole that's suited for the
That's why I
uncensored
say I don't
show.
want to go, right? So I'm just saying,
I know.
it's hidden in plain sight, right?
There are rabbit holes that you can go down and just not for specifically this show.
No.
But let me tell you something. This is why, Beyond the Outer Realm is what it is right now, because it's going to tackle not only just occasional special edition shows like the one coming up next week, but it's going to tackle those uncensored topics, because there is a whole lot of stuff out there, and you sometimes just don't know where do you start, But again, so we're going to move on to have you guys ever heard of a devil's door on a church? I'm going to present a picture of one, and then I will explain it. 1 second. Okay. Share. All right, here we go. Okay. So this is an example of a devil's door. Okay. And basically it comes from, folklore, and it warns that the devil's door, which is usually a hidden entrance in old churches, were meant to let out, evil spirits, especially, whenever during baptism or other holy rites. And over time, many of them were sealed. So that's kind of interesting. But in some places, a lot of people say that they could still hear, the wind howling where these things once stood. So maybe this is something, something ethereal, sort of waiting to get through. And I want to give a big shout out to Historium Unearthia on X, because this is something he posted or she posted, and I thought, wow, I always love to give credit, where I find stuff, and I highly recommend, checking this page out, because it's always got really great information. So I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. If so, what have you heard? Share it up. Hi, Harry. Hello. Hi, Mark. Great you're here. Snowed under with the cats. Oh boy, that's that. That'll be adventurous. Sure, I last saw one. I saw one the last time I was in England, when I went to the side. It was an old 1500s church. Yeah, so you kind of have them off to the side somewhere. So I don't know, folklore, old wives' tale. What do we think?
I don't know. It depends. It's hard to get a scale from the picture. Like, is it like
Yeah.
like a smaller door? Is it a standard door?
No, it appears to be like a standard door.
Hmm.
I think that they could definitely be, they could definitely be using it for sure.
Well, like architecturally speaking, in when they were built, they may not have been a devil's door. It might have just been an escape door. Like
Mm-hmm.
if the enemy comes through the front, to persecute you, you have a way out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's where my logical brain goes. And then the idea that they were bricked up and filled in,
Mm-hmm.
logic says that it's also a point of access for thieves.
Mm-hmm.
When it's a side door where it's not lit, and kick it in, break in, cause damage. So they brick them in. That's my
Mm-hmm.
logical brain talking.
Mm-hmm. Very possible. I tend to agree, but I love a good piece of folklore. It's
For sure.
always great. Always great. So we're going to talk a little bit about, before we get into anything else. Hold on. Facebook's still having hiccups, guys. So I do have to apologize. It should rectify itself. Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. Um, we're going to start talking about Dogman and the different sightings in Canada. Hence that we've seen a lot of things. There's stuff all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
So werewolf legends, because Dogman, there's names for them. Different names all over the world. New Orleans kind of calls them Loup Garou. Indigenous folklore throughout Canada, it's always been Loup with an L, which in French is wolf, Loup Garou. And we have Dogman, we have werewolves, throughout the world. I could tell you when we were in Romania, and I'm mentioning that because tomorrow night, I'm bringing on two of my dearest friends who have been with me for the last at least 15 years and are probably and part of my team and probably the closest people to me, really, aside from people I live with, who I know, right? Who have always been that constant presence, but they're also my travel mates. And tomorrow night we talk about the Hoia Forest, and we're going to talk a little bit about these stories as well throughout Romania. But anyway, when we were in Brasov, Romania, it was interesting because the story that is told about this incredible place is just beautiful. And I think we're going to do some show and tell tomorrow too. But it was that they had werewolves because the wolves or wolf people come down on every full moon and they come down into the courtyard. So usually everybody just vacates the courtyard on the full moon, because the wolves come down to this place, and it's just such an ancient land full of folklore. And there's always been this belief that maybe the wolves have been the ones who have guarded certain places. It's nuts. It's just nuts. But of course, the full moon happened a few days later when we were at Hoia Forest. So I couldn't be in two places at one time. Not that I wouldn't have liked to have teleported over there for a moment, but it was not meant to be. Anyway, but these stories are all over the place, and they are often looked upon as old world legends. But the indigenous people of the Americas have had a lot of folklore about them and werewolf legends. They didn't consider these beings to be just skinwalkers or traditional werewolves, meaning, people who could turn into wolves on full moon, that kind of thing. So it's stories that go back at least to the 1700s here in the Americas, right? So yes, the children of the night. So I don't know, but you also had we both had crazy experiences, but the Niagara region has a lot of different different stories. So where do you want to start with it? Do you want to go to the Port Robinson Beach? Or you just want to talk about things that's been seen right
Well, if
along
we
the
go,
river?
yeah, I can talk about the ones that one happened to me personally, and one happened to a friend of mine who was living with me at the time, and
Yeah.
then we can talk about the Beast of Port Robinson, because I heard that secondhand, right? Whereas the
Yeah.
other ones I can talk about directly.
Okay. Mhm.
I had never heard of such a thing, to that degree before. And when I was living in Niagara Falls, I had a manor house, and we've spoken about it before, but it had a huge veranda on the front, a big, long, massive veranda. I used to sit out there for hours writing or editing or whatever. And on this one particular, not quite evening, but getting close to it, very quiet on the street, nothing going on. It was a weeknight. There was no tourists. And I saw, like, from the corner of my eye, this big shape kind of loping down the street, and then it went behind the bushes. And so it was enough to catch my attention and get me to, like, sit up and take notice. And then it went down the street past the veranda, and this thing was a dog of some sort, for sure. It was huge. Like, this thing was huge. It was like as big or bigger than a Great Dane, but it was almost skeletal looking. It was like really long, shaggy hair, kind of gray looking, a really long, elongated nose, and the lips were curled up. It was running, and it loped. It loped like a horse more than a dog did. And I don't spook easy. If you jump out, I'll jump, right? But I mean, I don't spook really easily. And that was enough. When that thing went by, that was enough for me to, like, just my flesh kind of turned funky. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go inside. And I literally went and locked the doors. I'm like, I don't need to see that again. And then not long after that, the friend who was living with me, he used to get up early to go to work in construction. So he got up, got in his pickup truck, and went down the street, towards the downtown core, which isn't very much in Niagara. So anyway, he went down there. It was a foggy morning, dark. And he said he got to the end of the street, and there's these old style lights that are supposed to look like gas lights, but they're electric, right? So it's just the quaintness of the town. And he said he saw a guy, kind of, he said heavy set, like a bit of a belly on him. And he was walking across the road. And he went through a lamplight and then into the fog, which was in the middle of the road because there was a railway bridge just beyond it. So it's very dark. So he stopped the truck and he waited. He goes, I'm going to wait until I see that guy come out of the road before I start under the bridge, because I can't see under the bridge because it's so foggy. And he said what came out of the fog was that dog. There's this big, manky, shaggy looking thing with the long nose, and it looked at the truck and he looked at the dog, or this thing, and he was like, honestly, Wayne, I was so frightened at that moment. And this guy's a big guy, and I didn't take my eyes off this thing. I just put it into reverse, didn't even look behind me. I just slowly backed all the way down the street to your house, pulled in the driveway, and went the other way. He goes, I was totally rattled, never seen nothing like it. And he grew up north, and he saw wolves all the time. He said, I never seen nothing like that.
Same.
Yeah.
I grew up around timber wolves and other wolves, and
he was rattled.
But they're not even native to this area. And yes, we have coy wolf, but they're just small and really mangy looking. Like they are a cross, but they're not very big.
This was big.
Yeah, and they sure don't shapeshift. And I'll get into a whole bunch of that after. So before we get to the next story, Howie says, here's a thought. And I like this thought. What if we have driven them out from the inner earth onto the top side? They are talking about finding all of these underground sites now that dwell, and they dwell there. And we found their dens. Just a thought. This could be Bigfoot and all types of creatures. I love it. Maybe they're vampires, no pun, Wayne, but names of other things. Maybe they are. I think that is all very possible, considering the fact that we don't really know. We have so many locations and cavern systems everywhere, tunnel systems. We have dense forests, these national parks and provincial parks, and there's a lot of places where you could enter in. And one of these thoughts, when Howie put this up, is if you go down along the Niagara River and you look both sides of the border, you will see there are what appear to be cave entrances that go in. And we didn't notice them as much because there's always so many people around. At least, at the time when we had the house there. But I mean, when everything was locked down for a while and you're driving, I'm like, is that like a cave entrance? Just I'm looking, right straight onto the side, and there appear to be a few of them. And of course, a lot of people go into the caves behind the falls and things like that. So we know there's definitely things there. Where do they go? Hi, Mark.
I know where some of them go. I mean, some of them, as ugly as it is, they were sanitary drains from the houses on both sides.
Yeah.
They came from the houses, and when you flushed, they went out the
Then they
side.
went
I
out?
know. That's exactly
Yeah.
where they went. I know
But
for a
some of
fact
these are
because I
really
had
big.
that. Oh,
Yes.
they're really big. For sure they
Yeah.
are. I'm not saying everyone, but some of them are
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
But I mean, I think
Yes.
these wolves that walk upright are a species all into their own. I don't know if they
Yes.
shapeshift or not, but I think they're just another creature that's been pushed out of its environment, like how I said.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's there's a lot of that, and I'll get into that part of the folklore shortly. But you were told, you guys will have heard me tell this story somewhat because again, it's third hand for me.
Mm,
So why don't you tell the story because it was
sure.
told to you?
Yeah.
And this is the legend of the Beast of Port Robinson.
Port
Maybe
Robinson.
explain why, like maybe why there are sightings now before we get
Sure.
into the actual experience.
Okay.
Okay.
Port Robinson is just a town just, I got to think for a second, south of us. And when they put the Welland Canal through, the last one, the big one, that joins Lake Erie to Lake Ontario, that canal went right through Port Robinson. And it divided the town right in half. Boop. And they put bridges in, lift bridges. When the ships were coming through, the cars would have to wait while the bridges went up and so forth. They believe that in doing that, it interrupted a lot of migratory paths of the various animals that were in that area. One of them being this wolf that walks upright kind of thing. So the only way to get across was either to swim or to take the bridge. So I think that's what the locals were saying. That's why they started to see more and more of this thing around. And before that, it was just kind of in passing. It was just kind of lore. But where I got the story from was I was at a convention and I sold a book to someone, and then I had to get that book to that person. So I arranged to make a meeting at a of all places, a U-Haul place to rent trailers and stuff. Anyway, I just got jamming with her about vampires and ghosts and spooky stuff, and I guess she felt comfortable enough because I'm freaky enough that I'm not going to judge her for her own tale.
Mm.
And she said, "I'm going to tell you a story." And I said, "Okay, shoot." And what she said was there was a house in Port Robinson that she goes, it's kind of like every town has the haunted house, right?
Mm.
And it was sort of a rite of passage when you were in high school, like, the kids would dare you to go up to the haunted house and stand on the veranda or walk in the front door and see if you could stay there 30 seconds or whatever, then run back, right? That's what they used to do. Anyway, she said, I'm not in high school, obviously, but, I wasn't around at that time. But she said, my girlfriend and I were driving down that road, and we stopped just before we got to the haunted house and had a little laugh about, oh, you remember when kind of thing. And she said, then I saw this teenage boy come whipping out of the laneway between the houses and just bolted across the road. And we laughed because we said, oh, there goes one that didn't make it, as he chickened out kind of thing. And we started to drive. And as we drove past the end of that laneway, she goes, there was this wolf-like creature that stood up in the narrow confines of the laneway.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, it was clear enough that I could see it. And she goes, it was not just like a small dog or a coyote jumping up on its legs to catch a ball kind of thing. It was big.
Mm-hmm.
So her girlfriend, who was looking out the window, goes like, book it. Book it. So the accelerator goes down and boom, they go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they get off the little road and onto the main secondary road, where the speed limit's about 50 miles an hour, 80 kilometers an hour. And they're bolting it down this road. And she looked out the passenger window. She went to look in the rear view and then looked at the passenger window and said, this thing was literally running beside the car, but it was on 2 feet. And she started freaking. So my friend was screaming. I didn't know what she was going on. I couldn't see it. She was seeing us beside the car. And then all of a sudden she heard like the banging, like it was hitting the doors as it was running. So she said, like, I just booked it. I put the metal down, away we went. And we raced home, which wasn't far. We raced home, we parked the car, and we ran into the house, and we locked the doors, and we just sat there until morning, terrified, right? And the next morning, she says, we went outside, and there was scratch marks all in the paint. And I think the passenger mirror was either damaged or broken as well. She'll never forget it. She goes, I just never so scared in my whole life. So
That's
that was
crazy.
from her to me, yeah.
That's crazy because I mean, you think about it, that's really close. And there's been sightings of this thing, and this has been a local legend that's been going on for a couple of decades,
Yeah.
where there have been various sightings. This is just one of the newer ones I heard about. Life is for all. Welcome, welcome. My great uncle shot at a creature that stood at least 9 feet tall. 4 of his
On all
master
fours.
dogs chased it all off. Yeah. As well. I still have no idea what it was or where it came from. That's crazy.
That's huge.
That is crazy. Hey, Steve, how are you? So, I mean, you look at that. That thing is huge. That's 9 feet tall.
There's another one. Do you remember that story when I had the bed and breakfast at the manor? And there was that gal that lived up on Guelph Line, up that way. She said when I was little, she lived on a farmhouse, and her mother said never go out past the fields into the trees.
That sounds like the same story I was told, but it was a woman's grandmother. So I wonder if it was
the same person.
Or the same family member.
It could be. But she'd always said, don't go out past the tree line.
Yeah.
And the daughter would say to her mother, she says, well, I see the wolves that walk upright. And she goes, no, there's nothing out there. It's your imagination. It's the shadows. It's the fog. It's the trees, whatever. Yeah. And it wasn't until way later when this woman was grown up and, and they were in the home and they were doing dishes and talking to each other. And she says, I did see those creatures. I don't know why you couldn't see them. And her mother just said, oh, I saw them. I saw them all the time, but I just didn't want to have you believing in it and then worrying about it or focusing on it and going trying to figure out what it is. I didn't want you out there.
No.
Oh,
no. And
wow.
to add to that, to the story I heard, was a woman had come up to me because she came to one of the events I'd done. So I'm just trying to place her. She's just somebody I did not know. And essentially, she gave the same story, but it wasn't at the top of Guelph Line. It was out in a town called Elmira. Elmira. And she had said this along the same lines. It had to have been the same family. She had said, I grew up with my grandmother telling me to never go walk along. They had a big farm up there. And she said in the forest, butted up against the property. And she said, never go past, close to the forest within the line. Stay on this side of the line. I guess there was a fence. Anyway, one day when she was older, she goes, I was probably about 15, 16, feeling a little bit adventurous, if memory serves me correctly on the age. And she made it halfway into the acreage of the farm, and she saw 5 what looked like wolves or large dogs. She goes, I could tell because of the ears and the longer snout on them. But the key is that they were walking upright, like just following suit, one walking behind the other along the edge of the forest line in between the farm property and the dense forest. Now, that area of Elmira is known. It's highly known for a lot of paranormal activity and other levels of high strangeness, of course. So that was an interesting story. And when you came up with your story, I went, oh, it's perfect because there's just so much in that area that it just sort of, kind of freaked me out. And then it reminds me of another story with a family I was working with, which was heading out towards the Windsor, Detroit area in Ontario. Yes.
I just want to interject one thing while we're on it.
Yeah.
Is where I was talking about at the top of Guelph Line and where Elmira is and where you're going with your story, as the crow flies, that's nearly a straight line. So think about migratory paths, quite possible.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because it would, but I mean, yeah, it's way up. It could very well be. Well, you look at it that way. There's a
So I
little
had to do
tidbit.
it.
But the other area is going east and southeast. And what is interesting is I was given a story by the family of I guess the family was away, and one of the older sons was coming to stay at the house so he could be there for the dog. And he was out having, campfire with a significant other at the time, and they were hearing things out, in the woods. And again, they're talking a really large property and a lot of farmland out that way. And essentially, she's like, "Yeah, I've pretty much had enough." So he basically says, "Okay," she leaves. He goes into the house. Dog's like having a Pan needs to go outside and do his business. So they basically, um, they basically go in, and he takes the dog outside. The dog is losing its freaking mind and is trying to get back into the house. There's just no way he's not doing it. And Buddy's like, "Come on, like what's going on?" All of a sudden, he turns around and he sees this tall, hooded figure, and he thought he saw something protruding from that. Either way, he grabs the dog, books it in the house, closes the door, and something hits the door with great force. And all of a sudden, he could smell something sniffing the top of the door frame. And he could swear like he saw like a bit of a glow to the eyes. And what's weird, around this time, during investigation with one of the original teams that was, that brought me on to assist initially, and I took it over afterwards, was that there had been a UFO sighting or UAP sighting in that area within the exact same time, because people had called into the police department with their sightings, and a farm probably between 5 and, I would say 5-7 miles away, which would be about 10K for us, reported that they had workers on their property doing work, and they saw a gray coming out of there. So we have this correlation between, again, this one being of high strangeness with an ET, and sometimes there is this blend. There are these crazy connections. I told you about the encounter that I had a few years ago with the creature on the bridge. That would have been told me that about quite a while. I think you may have mentioned it when you were on one of the shows. Can you just write it out quick, and then I'll put it up. I'll put it up. And was that Burlington? I'm curious to see if it's Burlington, because we got Burlington stories too. So, okay. Okay, 1 second. Putting up comments. New York is where Jane Roberts channels Seth. I wonder if there's something strange about the name Elmira. And it's possible.
Could be.
My great uncle was in Mississippi. Lots of stuff in Mississippi. It's like New Orleans. There's tons of stuff going on in New Orleans. Also, the creature was upright and had scales. Sounds to me like a reptilian individual. She was told about. The 4 dogs chased it off. Does not surprise me at all. That is crazy. And a bull mastiff, they mean some serious business. They're great dogs. That's crazy. But there are stories down there, down in the south. I mean, pretty much everywhere. But you hear a lot about, reptilians kind of popping up here and there. I mean, especially out California, the southern states. They seem to have ways in and out. But of course, Alan will tell you that there is a large cave system out there as well, out that neck of the woods, and who knows how long it stretches. So
it's one of the biggest in the world, I think, in Kentucky.
I think so. So when we start getting into, are you talking to me? When we start getting into some of the stories, there have been stories in Burlington, and Steve was in Burlington also, which is where I lived, and it's where he's from. And one story came from, and this was just an account that I was shown. Okay, hold on. The stories are high strange. Puppy line. No, I haven't, but I think you should come on the show sometime and we could talk about it. We should talk about some crazy, local stories, Steve. Seriously. Um, one of the stories that I was told was not, Steve, you'll know where this is, on Upper Middle Road, between Brand Street and Guelph Line, if I'm not mistaken. And a mother and her daughter were traveling by car, and they saw something crossing the road, which looked like a tall, like a very high, like it had really long, lanky legs and this really long, lanky nose and snout, and it just looked really rough. And it was the length. They said, according to them, when they had to stop the car, that it was the length from, the back hips to the nose. It took up a lane. Now, how big is a lane? A vehicle lane? Here, what? 8 feet? 6 feet?
10
Asking
anyway.
you. 10.
10, yeah. I'm just trying to doing the math in my head, because my truck
Yeah.
is like 5.5 feet, 6 feet, so it doesn't leave 8 feet, doesn't leave you much, foot on each side. It's got to be 10. My driveway is
God.
12.
That's true.
So
Let's exchange dates then, Steve. I say let's do it. Lots of stuff to talk about. I love it. Yes, I accept, and let me get you some dates also. So there's that story. And then I got a story from a family member's, a friend of my, family member, who was driving with his father not far from my old house. I'm just going to say that without giving away where it is, because new people have the house. I don't think they'd appreciate having people showing up on the property. And he said, now I can't tell you, like, I will make mention that wasn't far from where UFO Lookout was. I'll let you Google that. But that's a whole other bunch of series of events that happened. But he claimed that he and his father were driving by our house one night at the time, going back years ago, and that they saw something tall and pretty much upright crossing the road that looked a whole lot like a big dog.
it wasn't me. So
Too close for bloody comfort on that one. But when I think back to the whole area and the weirdness around it, I remember tales of my daughter saying, that she looked outside one night when she was younger and looked out into the backyard. There was this tall sort of a being. She goes, you could see a glow to the eyes and just staring at the back of the house. I'm just like, my poor children were traumatized because there's crazy stuff all over this damn place. And, when we think about that, okay, email me, please. Let's do this, or message me. Let's do this. All kinds of stuff went on. I wonder if the ley line Burlington on Brant has anything to do with the high stranges down that area, for sure. Absolutely, for sure. I've seen crazy things down in that area, for sure. A lot. I've had people say down on the other end of Plains Road, going towards the city of Hamilton, there's a huge cemetery out that way. And I was told one time that an individual who shall remain nameless at the time, that he had to stop the car because there were two of these beings that were just kind of, trotting across the road. And when they got down into the cemetery, they just stood up and walked. I don't know.
it's out there.
It's out there. So I'll talk about, you've heard me talk about this really large dog. I'm going to put up a picture of the back of my property in the winter. Okay. Just to give you a bit of an idea what this looked like. Okay. This was the winter time. We had just removed the pool. This whole area, by the way, at the time we were in transition in the spring, it was being turned into a really large patio. Okay, so it doesn't look like that, but I'm going to show you the picture. Okay, just so you know what I was looking at the time. So I'm looking out of a kitchen window, which is large. The whole part of that house was just like all windows. Okay, Notice all the hydro lines back there? Like, wonder if that has anything to do with all the crazy stuff back there? Just saying, buzzing
And
me
it's
all the
also
time.
beyond that. It's just nothing but ravine and trees. It's nothing.
Forever.
It's just,
Yeah,
yeah, forever.
forever. There's tons. I mean, I was surrounded by ravine. Literally, I was surrounded by ravine. I had a, kind of like on a corner, two roads. One was dead quiet, and the other one was a little bit more activity, but dense ravine all over. So if you guys look right up and over here, okay, right in that spot, bear this spot in mind. Okay, I'm looking out the window and I see this large, I mean, really big canine. I've never seen anything that big. I've owned huskies, malamutes. I know what they look like, right? I've done a lot of husky and malamute rescues. We had facilities and a couple of acres of property. Like we know the breeds very, very well. I grew up around timber wolves, regular wolves. I know my wolves as well. So now this huge dog comes out of nowhere chasing a rabbit. I'm sitting. I always seem like I'm hand washing dishes when all the good stuff happens, but I'm hand washing dishes, and my phone's in the den, which is just one room over, and I stop anything that looks in. I mean, we have deer that come up, and if I make a move, they book it because it's all windows. You can see clearly, right? Cloudy day like this, the rabbit books it under one of our outbuildings, and this dog, canine, whatever the crud it was, stops, put the brakes on, haunches up, gets up, and drops back down and just sat. Or well, it didn't sit, but it sort of back in, haunched down a little bit, and it was looking around, and I dared not move. I dared not move. I'm just looking and admiring this incredible animal, thinking to myself, what the hell was it? And it was full. It was so full. That being said, I message Wayne and I'm like, oh, you have to see what I just saw. And so he came over, and I'm just going to show a couple of the pictures that were taken. So this is just one. It just kind of shows you that where it was scrambling around a little bit. And
Just for the record, she sent me out there by myself.
he offered to go by himself. So there you go. Okay, this is his hand. And that's one of the prints right there. And it was just standing. Where that one was, it just stood. Yeah. So, I don't know. Kind of big.
It was big.
I'm kind of like, jeepers, man. It was crazy. It was crazy. I've never seen an animal like a canine that big.
You
before.
look at my hand against my face.
Okay, hold on.
It's big. It was a big footprint. And like
it was.
I don't see things like that in this neck of the woods. I'm not saying they don't exist. But
yeah, let me look.
around here.
Let me bring it back. Okay. So do the example again.
Okay.
The hand next to your face.
Look at that. That's my head. That paw is almost as big as my face.
So I don't know. Feel free to chime in. It was crazy, But for me, I felt as though, you must describe it. That's exactly how I pictured it. Thank you. It was crazy. It was crazy. But I tell you, like all I could do is sit and admire how beautiful this thing was, because it stood there for a minute. And sure enough, as soon as I moved, it swung around, looked at the house, and it was gone down the ravine. And I was just like, oh my God. And when he came back with the pictures, I'm just like, incredible. Simply incredible. Not a dog. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that as well. I definitely wonder.
The other thing I want to mention too about that print is that there were the ones that skid marked where the dog was, or the animal's sliding to try to get this rabbit. Mm-hmm. But you got to remember something. When I pushed my hand in the snow, that was like a winter's worth of snow. So it had packed down. There was a little layer of like crusty, icy snow buildup on the top. So I pushed my hand into it. That print from that animal went deep. Like that was a heavy animal as well. It wasn't just like,
No, it
a
was big.
small German Shepherd or something.
So what was I looking at? We hear all this talk about dire wolves. I mean, I can't even picture I can't picture one being in the area, but I don't know. I have no explanation. We don't have wolves in the area,
That we know
you
of.
know, that we know of. Apparently, there's a lot of things in the area that we don't know of. But I went. I mean, I went in. Seriously, where people like wash a few dishes. We don't use the dishwasher. We just wash them. If I'm using a plate and a glass, I wash it right away. I don't leave it in the sink. And that's what I'm doing. My hands are wet. I look. I'm just like, don't move. It happens with deer. This thing here it was steady and it was sitting there, but you could see it was gathering, gathering itself. I maybe just trying to figure out its surroundings. I don't know because it was very, very still. And after that, I'm just like, okay, as soon as I moved, it spun over, it looked at me, it spun around and it went down straight down. When you look at that picture at that back fence, it went straight down because there was a lot of property on the other side of that fence. And he was on the other side of that fence. And I'm thinking that that rabbit was counting its luck that day. Because we could see the tracks where it went in under one of the buildings. We actually have the black cats down near Niagara region. In fact, the Ministry of Natural Resources down here have found bones and they have found feces, things like that. They've actually tracked reports of them here, which was kind of interesting. I saw a newspaper article about it one day and thought that's cool because it just shows this urban legend. So let's talk about that urban legend for a moment of these
Can we talk about that horse that got killed?
farm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't
Do
sure
it.
if you could mention it or not.
Yeah, do it. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
no names.
No, I
obviously.
won't. I can't. No, I won't. But we got called in to do a paranormal investigation, and it went from
We filmed that
we
actually.
were
Yeah.
filming it, and it went from ghosts to something. It went in a completely different direction, and the guy basically said, there was this. He showed us the claw marks on the side of the barn. And they were deep, and he said he woke up to this screaming of this horse out in the field, and he ran out there, and it was the mother. The mother had died trying to protect its offspring, but it was a big black cat that took it down, and it was just tore it to bits.
The baby. Yeah.
Didn't get the baby.
No, the mare sacrificed herself for
correct.
the foal. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean those claw marks in the barn door and stuff, they were big. They were big. If it had got in there, it would have been carnage. But that was a powerful set of limbs on that animal, whatever it was.
Yeah, we
did he said he'd never seen nothing like it.
No, we did get pictures of it. It was a crazy story, but we have pictures of the claw marks.
Somewhere.
They were deep. No. I
they were deep. They weren't just little scratches in the paint. They went right through into the wood, deep wood gouges. It was almost like it was like running on it, trying to dig its way through. It wasn't just a.
No. It was insane. It was seriously insane. The things that.
And I never knew that stuff exists. I didn't know we had big cats beyond a bobcat. I didn't even think we had mountain lions this far south. But this thing was huge, apparently, and black in color.
And witnesses as well, which was very, very sad. But that was a crazy piece of property as well. This horse doing crazy things and such. I'm asking if it may have been a Wendigo. We have Wendigos in the area, and this thing would not have been. It was big, but it was very full. Really full, like a big dog with a full winter coat. It wasn't tall, lanky. It wasn't anything like that. Hello. But we do have them. I remember, I think I spoke about this on a show that I did where we were in cottage country doing an investigation. I thought that too. I just didn't want to say it. um, anyway, we had one of our team members at the time, very gifted medium, and he's just this calm. He had this just really calm. I don't know. It was not he didn't have this the high voice, but it was just kind of like this and
It was
very.
very matter of fact when he spoke.
He was. So our team is out there, 3 a.m. We're leaving, and it's all woods everywhere. And this was an old trading post, by the way, that had been converted into a home. So what made it interesting is 3 a.m. We're trying to get in a vehicle, and one of our team members at the time is just loading stuff in the back, and there was like this Xena war cry. Like I've never heard anything like it. And of course, him, or the medium being indigenous, looks at me very calmly, cool as a cucumber, and goes, "That was a Wendigo," just like that. I'm like, "What?" He goes, "That was a Wendigo." And then the other team member's like, "Why are you just standing there? Get in the car." I'm just like, okay. So it was just a crazy, strange series of events for the whole investigation. But as we're leaving there, again from the back seat, it's our team member, our medium, going, "It's following." I need to know that. Thank you. That's great. But it was very interesting. So we've been many sightings of these things around, and it's very big in the indigenous oral history with Wendigos. And being indigenous, he had all kinds of information on it. And he goes, "No, that's exactly what it was." Like, okay, which one, Life? My sighting at my previous home. Yeah, I don't know. There wasn't. It didn't have the typical look of either. To be honest, it wasn't as big, and it wasn't standing upright. It hunched up for a very short period of time, and then just took a look around and got down, and its front kept its front legs straight while it was completely standing. It was crazy. I've never even quite seen any of my huskies or malamutes do stances like that, and they would have been considerably smaller. And I've had really big, um, you know, really big dogs. No, they said it was like a big Black Panther style cat. There was definitely a witness to it. And we know that they're around. The like what the U.S. park rangers would be. We've got like they call the Ministry of Natural Resources or Forestry. They look at the forests and they look at everything. And there was an article in the paper, and they actually followed it up. And apparently, they track these sightings to see where the movement goes. It was interesting for sure. Moved up from being. Wayne has been a guest and a guest host many times, actually. So here we are.
I'll be back in the chat tomorrow, my friend.
There we go. Yeah, see, there we go. That's right, Alan. Exactly. So, but I think there's some areas that really do have a lot of stories of high strangeness. Because when I go back to the house where we saw this canine, a lot of UFO activity, a lot of it. I mean, that's a whole other bunch of stories right there. But all kinds of UFO activity in and around there. I mean, that house, it was a big Cape Cod. So upstairs, big upstairs, always bigger than the main floor, the way they're designed. But sometimes it'd be like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and the house would shake, and something would come over the house, and just like I'm thinking, what's a plane? Like this pretty low. It's a low plane. I'm trying to be logical. That's a low plane, but it was pretty regular. I'm thinking, oh, it can't be that right, And then you start looking up, like, get on the radar and start looking on your app and seeing where the planes are flying. And this wasn't a busy spot. There's no airport there, but there's one, I bet you, half an hour away. So, things are kind of going on. And hey, Morgana. And I'll tell you something. It was really crazy. And then we have other family members who just don't like specific, like grays. don't like Greys. Never liked Greys from the time he was a child. He hated Greys. He just, I know. Then I find out as an adult, yeah, I'm up along the ceiling and somebody's trying to pull me out of the house. I'm like, how do I know this when you're 18? Why do I know this when you're 5? But it's just, there was just all kinds of stories going on. And as mentioned, UFO Lookout was not far from there. So one night, again, at about 2, 3 in the morning, this, like, because I used to do, ghost tours and things like that. So I would come home late some nights. All of a sudden, there's this very loud black van right there. And it kept circling it up, up the main street. And then you knew it was turning around somewhere and coming back and doing it again. Blacked out windows, completely dark, loud. So I look outside and I catch this thing going by, and it's just like a typical, what is this, like a Men in Black vehicle? What is this?
Sounds like it.
It got weird. It just got weird. That's all I got to say.
Well, there's lots of weird.
I know. There's a lot of weird. Portal opening up. Great. It's possible.
That has to be a big portal. Let me tell you what, that's loud.
It was loud. Yeah, it was really loud. It was crazy.
Because we have the air show that was in around that time. They'd fly out of that airport's half an hour from you. And they've got the Lancaster that goes over, and that's got some huge engines in it. And it's low because it's doing a show. Mm-hmm. And it didn't rock your house like that.
Nothing.
No.
And it just seemed to be, it wasn't super loud. Like you just added, like you knew there was something there. And you look up. You don't really see anything. And most of the time, I'm just trying to get to sleep. That's it. Thank you, Heidi.
It's probably a saucer sitting over the hydro lines at the back powering up.
Everything's great. That's wonderful. I especially don't like it over top of the house, like beam me up maybe, because I really wasn't embracing that side of things at the time, So I really wasn't. Unlike now. So obviously it's been happening for a while. Joe Montaldo, he was, yeah, he probably would. Joe would. But yeah, so there's so many different stories based on these levels of high strangeness. Like
there's a lot out there we don't know.
They're not wrong. There is a lot out there that we have absolutely no idea. So as we move along, we get into, again, now sightings in some parts of Canada go back to the 1600s, when the settlers are first coming in. But a lot of these stories actually come from the indigenous going back to the 1600s. And they would call it, again, the Loup Garou. And I truly have no doubt that some of these things made their way over with settlers who initially came over. And the belief system surely did. France was said to have had werewolf sightings, like an epidemic of them going back into the 1400s. So when you have, ships coming over from the New World, from France and other parts of Europe, et cetera, they're coming over. You don't know what's coming with them along with their belief system. But when they left Europe, they brought those fears and superstitions and beliefs with them. And there were werewolves that plagued, for example, Quebec, because a lot of people came in from the east, settled in the province of Quebec, and they were quite different than their European counterparts that changed with the full moons. They were very, very different, right? But there were just some that it was crazy. And the newspapers back then, there was a report going back to 1767 that published a report of a werewolf that was spotted the previous summer just outside the stone walls of the city. Like, this is like in the newspaper.
Well, you have to keep in mind, too, though, like at one point in time, this was one big, massive continent. So like, except there's exceptions to every rule, right? Like Australia. Yes. But, I mean, werewolves that are in Europe, at one point, Europe was joined to us, right? And there was even the land bridge across the Bering Straits that at one time would have been warm. You could have walked across that. So we have evidence of elephants and woolly mammoths and things like that, all through the Americas.
Yes, that's right.
Because so it's if they're here, and this is just another form of creature that we don't understand or we haven't found yet. There's no reason to say that it couldn't have come across, right?
Yes. I truly don't doubt that at all. I think there's so many things that we don't know about. We know that there are stories of different beings that have resided here long before us. I believe we are the newcomers here, without a doubt. There are stories of Dogman working in the silk trade on the Silk Road. See, that's very interesting.
Never heard that. That's interesting.
That is very interesting. Werewolf sightings in France almost came about with the witch trials. No doubt. Yeah. That again, you have this type of event, and then you have these, you have these sort of sightings. One that has mystified me is, and I've briefly touched on this before, but land between the lakes in Kentucky and Tennessee areas. Here we go, Alan. It was for you. But people have been brutally and savagely murdered in this place. And the Shawnee had spoke of shape-shifting shaman who could form or took form of monstrous creatures. The Ojibwe folklore and legends state that these were beings that walked the line between man and animal. Very interesting. But there appear to be what they call supernatural creatures. Some people will say, well, no, they're Dogmen, Bigfoot, and then hybrids that they call Gogwe. So the Bigfoot out there, apparently everybody's aggressive in this area, by the way. And the Bigfoot are known as face eaters. And Dogman and Bigfoot, I know, are said to be at war. Bigfoot are in the southern regions, while the Dogmen are in the north. And there's people used to live here before, and they got cleared out by the military, got turned into national parks in hopes of maybe slowing things down, getting away from these beings. But with that being said, right, it's believed that the military have covered up a lot of these brutal events that took place there. And there were witnesses that swear they saw a captured Dogman in the back of a military vehicle that was being taken away to study. I mean, there's a super soldier for you. But soldiers or settlers who came into the area in the early 1700s reported seeing shadowy figures, seeing things out of the corner of their eyes that seemed to move at incredible speeds. Again, these eerie dancing lights over the lake, and then all these mangled bodies that had been, torn up. I mean, and it's savage. I mean, they don't discriminate from men, women, children. It makes no difference, apparently. So in the 20th century, things took a turn because the U.S. government evacuated the area under the pretense and guise of creating a national park. But in the Tennessee area, hunters have captured these things on trail cams, right? So, I mean, Kentucky's dark and bloody ground. Even American Indians didn't live there. They hunted there, but they didn't live there. Very interesting, Alan. Very interesting.
I find it interesting that anytime there's something weird going on, the government steps in and makes it a national park.
St. Christopher was a Dogman. That's interesting.
Never saw that.
Nope. Bridgewater Triangle. Yes. Appalachian Trail. Yes. Absolutely. John Lear used to tell the story. It was not true. I don't know. To say that story, I don't know. There's quite a bit out there, and there, of course, cryptozoologists or crypto researchers, cryptid researchers who have gone out there and investigated it, so, I mean, you're not going to see something every single time, but it gets really crazy. I'm not surprised that you would have military involving themselves in it by any means, Heidi, I just sat down with a coffee on the porch and just might go back inside now. Oh, poor Heidi. Sorry. I think I saw a witch when I was at church camp in St. Crispin in Oklahoma. She was flying over the ridge. Okay, see, there's something else.
There's a lot of stuff talk about that stuff. We've seen
not far from here. Remember the one in Milton? That's like
right.
an hour from here.
Yeah.
It's floating across the top.
And it looks like the typical witch on a broomstick. I'm
Yes.
looking at this thing. If that's a drone, that's pretty well done, I have to say. And I used to
Yeah.
do makeup for theater and stuff. I thought that was pretty well done.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. That was interesting. I had to stand my ground. I'm staying. Oh, well, love
So
and
if we
light,
don't hear from
sending you good
Heidi
vibes.
anymore, then we know what
I know.
happened, right?
I know. Yes, that's the one we were just mentioning, a flying witch in Milton.
Yes.
I know. See, it was in the 90s. But no rhyme or reason. So, do you think, God,
Not
I mean,
often.
I tend to think, my personal belief, and those of other people and researchers, so it's not just me, but maybe they're just coming through portals. Do we think they're just coming through portals? All
It
of these.
stands to reason. It totally stands to reason. When I first started working with you, we talked a lot about portals and things that happen. And you were the one that sort of told me about the correlation you were making between the staticky, crackling, bubble wrap sound and the little sparkler lights when a demonic entity was breaking through from one dimension to
Well,
another. And you
that was a
said it's
theory
also
among some researchers. Yeah.
right. You were just explaining that to me, but then as
Yeah.
it went along, it's a very similar story to when ET is coming
Okay.
in to our area. So I think the portal thing has a lot of validity
Mm.
with things like wolves that walk upright and the Sasquatch, Yeti, all these different dogmen and the witches and things. I do think they come in through portals, whether it's dimensionally or intergalactically. They're using some sort of naturally occurring thing that they can open and close.
Hmm. I think so. I think that it's very plausible when we look about. She does talk a lot about portals. Absolutely. Um, I think when you factor everything in, sometimes it's the easiest explanation. But I mean, you're looking at Bigfoot. Of course, you have primatologists that are saying no, they're definitely here, and I don't doubt that they are either. But then there's these other theorists who talk about the things like that they just disappear. They use portals like because they just travel quickly. We never find anything, and you have the footprints stop, like just stop, and you're looking
In the
around.
middle of nowhere.
And you're looking up, is there a tree here? Did they just jump? Or you check the perimeter to see if they've jumped even within the perimeter. A fairly big being is going to have a big enough stance they could probably really, jump at. And they look and they do a good scan of the perimeter. They just can't seem to find where it ends up, So I don't know. I don't know. It's different. But I don't know. Thoughts, guys? Chime in. Tamara, hold on. I think the ones that look like the predator are portal related for sure. Yeah, you're probably not wrong on that. I don't
But
know.
portals would explain a lot too if they are naturally occurring
Yeah.
or otherwise, because that goes right into the missing 411 and other people that just are walking and just they're with their friends, they turn around, buddy's gone, but he was
Yeah.
only 10 feet behind them or 10 feet in front of them and they never find the person.
No, it's
Like if
true.
that just opened up and closed and you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time,
Hmm.
you're no longer on the same floor as the rest of us.
Right? I don't know. There's stupid dogmen hang up in the trees, right? That just goes to show you. I think there are a lot of there's a lot of things out there that we don't know and that we're never going to know. Um, Humans are the most solid physical are on the most solid physical reality, but there's all kinds of beings on many different levels all around us. Our vision is limited, but by physical reality. Yes, yes, yes. Lots
100%.
going on we can't see. Yes, we can't hear the same. The frequencies are different. We certainly can't see the same, you know. So absolutely, without a doubt.
We're
So
very limited.
we are. Well, some you have people who are very, very gifted who can
I
see
am very
beyond.
limited. How about
Okay.
that?
No. Right. So I don't know. I mean, I think this is something that people have been chasing for a really, really long time. Really long time.
But
Um,
I think it lends itself too to what you've often said too, is that the veil between this and that is getting thinner and thinner. And I firmly believe that, because whether it's the amount of shows like this that are getting out there that are bringing everybody's awareness up, or
mhm,
people that are just doing their own metaphysical work, the stories are becoming fast and furious. They're coming faster
mm,
and faster. The sightings are much, much faster than what they were even 10 years ago. So
mhm,
I think that thinning of the veil, whether it's interdimensional or otherwise, is
mhm,
definitely a reality.
mhm. Well, I agree with you, and I think it's as people become more aware, also things are just we are just starting to pay more attention. How much of it's going on, and we're not paying attention? I agree with Life when she says, you know, we do know how to create portals. We absolutely do. And sometimes you just end up going through a portal or like vortexes, which are more natural vortices. You look at the guy, you know, all these people who've gotten lost or in the Bermuda Triangle, and yet one guy made it through. And he
Mhm.
went he had a total time slip, went through this thing, and somehow came out the other end. And he's talked about it, which is fascinating to me. But when we come into portals and look at time slips, you know, I'm going to be talking about this on Paranormal Insight tomorrow. FYI, that's going to be 3 p.m. Eastern time, and I will make sure it's on this YouTube channel for you guys to be able to watch it. But it's a story that you've heard us talk about before. And I had a family member tell me this story with somebody he knew, and you have a story of the running around the house. And
Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah, that's a whole other thing right together, right?
Can we just? I want to just touch on two
Go
things. One
ahead.
that you had, and one that I heard of,
Yeah.
which was so random, and they've actually put a reward out. There's some guy in New York near Times Square, and I can't remember what year it was, but it was in modern times. Suddenly appeared on a street corner, and he was dressed in like Victorian clothes, not like really high end Victorian clothes, but like
Hmm.
nice enough. And people kind of went, "Oh, well, that guy's really weird. Like, what's that all about?" And he looked very confused. And he walked off the curb and got hit by a car, right? And he died, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, "Well, what's with this dude?" Anyway, they took him to the hospital, and of course, he was dead. And
Yeah.
in his pocket, he had a voucher to get his horse back from where he had stabled the horse in New York, and that'd been gone for like 150 years. And nobody knows who this guy is. Like, where did he come from? Like, did somebody post a missing persons from 1854? Like, we lost John. He just disappeared one day. Like, it was
Right.
wild. And the other one was when you were in Romania, and you saw that guy in the forest with the old wooden cart,
Yeah.
and he looked at you, and you looked at him, and you went, "This guy's like totally out of place in
Well, I
this."
wasn't even. We're going to talk about that probably tomorrow night on the show.
Okay, yeah,
'Cause we
well, that
kind
was
of looked
wild.
and we're just like, I just wanted to walk up to him and poke him, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, is it a residual thing as well? We know there's a big portal up there in the forest. We know there is. So anything is possible with that one. Um, but you know, talking about the the story, because I heard a story from a family member of a friend of his who ran around the house, and
Mm.
he could hear his family, and they could not find him. And when he slipped back the other way, like he'd been gone for a while. Your story was very, very similar.
Very similar story. A buddy
Yeah.
of mine that I worked with quite a few years ago when I ran a motorcycle shop, and then we got jamming about ghosts and stuff like that, and he found out I was pretty easy to talk to about it. He said, "I'll tell you a story. It doesn't have anything to do with ghosts, but it freaked me out." And I said, "What was it?" He goes, "I was playing outside with my friends at my parents' house, and we were playing tag or hide and go seek or whatever. The guy on the
Melissa's
wooden."
validating the guy in
Oh
the
yeah,
car. She
okay,
was with
sorry.
me.
There we go, right on.
Tomorrow night, Melissa's on, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
this guy, they're
Sorry I
racing
bought you
around
for
with
us.
squirt guns or something like that. So they're chasing each other around the house. And I can't remember which way he said he was going. So I'm going to say clockwise.
Yeah.
And he said they were running around and running around. And he said, "I'm going to stop running and I'm going to run the other way, and I'm going to catch these kids coming around. I'm going to get them. So he ran around the house the other way, and there was nobody. His friends didn't show up. So he's like, oh, they must be hiding behind the back of the house. So he started walking slowly around the house, and there was nobody. There's nobody there. So he said, I actually panicked because I didn't know where they went. So I thought, oh, I can get my parents and tell them, like, Dave and John are missing. So he goes, I ran into the house, and my parents weren't there either. He was like, I could hear people talking, but he said it was like they weren't there. And I was freaking out. I was calling for them and everything. I couldn't find them. They weren't in any of the rooms. The whole house was empty. And so he said, I ran outside. I looked for them. I couldn't find them. And he said, the only thing I thought to do, and he goes, don't even ask me why I thought to do this, because he goes, I'm a child. But I ran around the house the opposite direction that I was running. And I just kept running around the house and running around the house. He said, I probably went around like 4 times. It wasn't a great amount of time. And he said, I came around the corner of the house and I ran inside because I could hear people talking. And my parents were just freaking at me. Like, where have you been? Like, we've been looking for you and calling for you. You've been gone for a couple of hours. Like, don't ever do that again. They wouldn't believe him that he was in the house. And said, I heard you talking, but I couldn't find you. They're just like, go to your room. Yeah. Don't lie, But that was, and this guy is like is a salt of the earth, kind of doesn't make up stories at all. He says, I have no creativity. Yeah. I got no creativity at all. 0,
Yeah.
That was wild for me to hear that.
I mean, they do happen. Look at that one time we were testing a piece of equipment, and I'll just leave it at that, right? It's just a piece of equipment. We often get things, designed. I've spent a lot of time and finances on just having things designed. Anyway, there was some planetary thing going on the night we tested it, like, certain planets had lined up or something along those lines. Because I remember saying, it'd be a good night to try. Let's wing it and see what happens. It was crazy that night because
it was wild.
Yeah. Do you want to tell it?
Up to you.
Because I've been listening to the sound of my own voice for a while, so
that's all right. Well, we're trying to tune this thing in a little bit, and it's just like it's a fancier ghost box. You know what I mean? It's really out there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, there's this droning noise. Like that, right? And what is that? Like, I never heard that before. That's a crazy noise. What is that? It sounds like engines. And so we're trying to dial it in a bit better. Can't lose the droning at all. It's right in there, and we're talking, and there's this voice comes over the droning, just like I'm talking to you now. But it had that. The only way I could describe it is it has that 40s kind of slang that they used to use. And I won't do it properly, but it's a very distinct voice you'd hear in the movies. You'd know it instantly. And the guy was like, oh, well, what's our heading? Blah, blah, blah. And we're like, did you hear that? That was cool. So Michelle's just like, who's there, please? And there's this silence. And another guy goes, did you hear that?
It was weird. It was weird.
It was weird. The guy goes, yeah, that was a woman. She sounded like the Queen. Right? Well, we're Canadian, right? So we don't have that twang, right? You don't have that twang.
Yeah.
Right? So she's like, well, yeah, who am I talking to? And the guy's like, oh, I'm Major. And it was
I asked for rank and position. We figured they were military.
Yeah, you said my name is Major, and it cut out. I remember that clearly. And
he goes, Major so-and-so, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am. And she said, what's your rank, serial number? What's your position? And he goes, I don't know. He goes, we're lost. It's dark. We can't see anything. Our last heading was, and he gave us the
2 out of 3.
He gave us a bunch of coordinates, but we put him out over the Pacific, but we couldn't get the other marker to tell us exactly where he was in the Pacific.
Yeah.
Right. Because my first go-to was Bermuda Triangle on the Atlantic, but he was in the Pacific.
Wrong side. Yeah.
Yeah, wrong side. Anyway, they were panicked. You could hear that they're talking back and forth. They weren't just talking to us. They were talking back and forth to each other and then to us, and he goes, can you help us? We've been lost for so long. We don't know where we are. It's dark, so Michelle's talking to them and trying to figure this out.
But you remember at first when they said, did you hear that? And they said, it's a man and a woman.
That was later.
Okay.
That
Okay. Go
they
ahead.
said, "Did
Yeah.
you hear
Okay.
that?" Correct.
Right.
But at the
Okay.
end, when we're trying to
Yeah.
figure out who they are, the
Okay.
one guy says to the first guy, he says, "I see them." And the guy's like, "Where?" He goes, "Right there. Look through the window. It's a man and a woman. They're
Like,
sitting at a table. They have electric lights." And we're like, my eyes must have been like saucers looking at Michelle across the table. And he's like, "You have to help us. We have to help us. I see a doorway." And Michelle's like, "Do not go through that doorway."
just had
All I could picture was
visions
a
of a
plane coming through.
B-52
Oh, man.
knocking the tower off the house or
Oh,
something.
it was a bit
But
jumpy. And they started the pleading,
I
"Please,
wanted to
please, you
cry.
have to help us." So we were
I
almost in
want,
tears.
I
And then we
wanted,
lost them
yeah,
completely.
yeah.
Lost them
Then they
completely.
disappeared. But I
Yeah.
was almost in tears. I'm like, please, please help us. And
Oh.
I was just like, oh my God, my heart sank. So what the heck, guys, do you think that was?
And we tried. We tried a year later on the
Same
same
night.
day, the same time, the same room.
Yeah,
We tried everything to see
everything.
if we could pick them off again.
Never
And
could
we
again.
couldn't do
No,
it ever again.
no, never could
So,
again. It was just so bizarre. Like,
yeah.
but it goes to show you. I mean, what was it? I mean, we have the dragon. Yes, the Dragon's Triangle absolutely is over the Pacific. Yes, it is. Absolutely. A
Could have
time
been
slip.
there.
That's what we thought.
We thought that's exactly what we thought was a time slip.
You
Did they
know,
get sucked into a portal and they're just not using any gas anymore? They've
moving
really only been
around.
gone for a few seconds in our world.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I mean, never heard or experienced anything like that before. Never have since. And this was
Not
many
to that
years ago
detail,
now.
not with that. The engines did it for me, and the conversations back and forth between the pilots and the pilot and the navigator.
But it was
Like there was three different
intelligent.
conversations
Yeah,
between
and
themselves and us.
yes, and it was intelligent. Like they described the scenario perfectly,
Yep.
which is like, okay, spirit can do that. Can they manifest, sounds and stuff? Sure, I believe that for sure. But what would have happened if we pulled them? I don't know. Like I said, I had visions. They described everything so perfectly, and they figured that they could go through this door. I mean, do not go through the door, because if they're, in my mind at the time, my spidey sense was like, oh, this is bad, because I just had vision of them coming out into this plane and knocking the tower off the house. We had a really big tower. This is a really big, it's a big manor house, and I just don't know what's coming through.
Well, technically, it could have come right through the living room that we were
Yes,
sitting in,
yes.
a 4-engine aircraft. And now what?
It sounded big, yeah, very,
Oh, it
very
was big, all
loud.
right.
But I mean, I mean, I guess if I was out someplace isolated at the time, I would have said, have at her. So, I mean, what was it like? Were the planets just lined up just perfectly? And it
Hey.
picked up. That's a Chihuahua. She's like
Sorry.
3 pounds trying to have her say.
That's not a dire chihuahua either.
I know. After this incident, y'all have heightened interest in military stuff. Not at all. Not at all, really. It's just, we did try to research it. And at the time, a few years ago, I actually asked if you want to just, it's all right.
Yeah, sure. They heard me talk to them now. They think it's all
Of
party
course.
time.
Okay. I had a military friend look into it to try to see, with the coordinates. I said, like, can you try to find out where this is? And the one coordinate just would not, it did not jive, which I found interesting. How did we get two and not bat and get two of them, maybe an attachment? It's possible. What would you do if it happens again? Well, we're no longer, in that location. So, because that house is very high up and very close to the river, and had all kinds, mega active in that whole area. I mean, would I like to? We've tried with a plan, thinking we would just say, just come through. I think it just caught us so off guard that again, you're thinking these, whoever they are, perfectly see you. There's a whole conversation going on, and I don't know. I really don't know. Well, I was clicking. Okay. Uh, Speaking of the cosmos, tomorrow, the new moon in Pisces and the planetary alignment. Yeah, the Schumann is active, and March eclipses. See, it's going to be crazy. Maybe that is the time to try again. I don't know. You
Makes me
know,
wonder.
I try to. Well, both of us, you especially, we try to be really logical about some of the things that we experience. We test stuff all the time, not as much anymore, but I still do have the equipment. I just had it built for me, and it. Let's just say it's never really disappointed very much,
Nope.
but I don't research as much anymore, and I retired from filming. So you just take this out once in a while, just to have a bit of fun at the most, testing planetary stuff and environmental stuff with it.
Mhm. No, I understand. It's like with that machine and with the one that did me and beyond that one was my dad. When my dad came through,
Mm,
because like my dad was military and is British as the day is long and an accent that's just as thick as tar. And
mm,
when he came through, like my hair stood on end. It was
mhm,
wild. He knew so much. It had to be my dad. It couldn't be anybody
mhm,
else. So I was asking him questions he knew the answers to right away, and it
mhm,
was the way in which he answered was so compelling. It was the thought, and you could hear him sigh
mhm,
about certain things. It
mhm,
was definitely an awakening for me for that incredible experience.
mhm. Yeah, it is. There are very talented people out there who make really incredible things, and I agree. I think at the time, life when we were testing this, you kind of half believe it, and you kind of like I've always believed that you don't make invitations because I work with really dark energies. Any of the cases and such that I've spent 2 decades working in has always been heavy, dark energy, and you don't invite that sort of stuff in. So I'm listening to something. I mean, we being fooled? Is this correct? What is the story with it? It just happens so fast that I need time to process, and I need time to investigate it, to research it, cross-reference it. Who went out at this time? Obviously, we're thinking World War II is what I'm thinking. I mean, if that's just by the accents and things like that. But yes, if we ever try again, we just happen to be near like a really exclusive high-end golf course. I don't think they'd appreciate a plane coming through, but it's a good spot to do it.
Be
So
safer than a house.
it's safer than a house. Wow. Can you imagine you come in, you land and go through a house and it takes you out?
It'd be over.
Everybody, them, us. Question: people say reincarnation is real. Then how come some spirits tend to linger for a long time? It wouldn't be the same for everyone if a source creator created us. Want to take it?
Ooh, I hate
You're
reincarnation.
very whimsical. Go ahead.
I hate reincarnation. I don't even like that whole idea that we just go round and round the merry-go-round.
Mhm,
But I think it comes down to a certain amount of freedom of choice. I think that some people get stuck here. The manner in which we die, if it's tragic and fast, you might be popped out of a car and standing on the side of the road, don't even know what happened.
mhm,
And waiting for Bob to come and pick you up, but Bob never comes, right? So there's
mhm,
that aspect of it as well. Some
mhm,
people who have really, not very pleasant lives, might have to spend some time in detention, let's say, so they don't get to reincarnate. They get to go to the bad boy school for a little while. And what did we learn today, Wayne? And not to be a bad person. That's right. Good. So maybe after like 50 years, you can go back and try again. These are just my random thoughts. And then other times that it's just like, I don't want to come back. Oh, you're going back. There's a kid right there. You're going to fill those shoes. And in I go. I'm just like, no,
mm,
please, no.
mhm.
So that's my
Yeah.
thoughts on it.
I agree, and there's different reasons for different things, and I mean, I could take a guess. I could tell you from a spirit point of view, unfinished business. You know, some people sometimes they don't realize they're even gone. They
Yep.
just wander around, trying to figure out why nobody's listening to them. And sometimes a lot of this ceases to be when you make them realize that they've passed on. I worked with a family whose young daughter died, and the family held her back because they just didn't want to lose sight of her. They wanted her. She was still present and leaving signs and just trying to be there to comfort them. And I remember being asked to go over there from another area. They were across the street. She said, "Can you just come over here?" I said, "Sure." And it was very tragic because the last vehicles that she had been in still had a bit of her smell, and they wouldn't sell these vehicles. They were just locked up and left aside. And it was just a sad case. And I said, "One day you're going to pass, and what happens?"
Mm-hmm.
"Well, there'll always be one of us here for her." And I'm just like, that's not fair. That's not fair. I understand the grief, but it's not fair. Eventually, from what I understood from people who live close by, was that they just let her go and they moved on and sold the place, and everything got sold, and everybody found peace, and the young one had moved on. So it's just, sometimes it's we ourselves who hold them back, you know?
I think the other question, go back to that first question of reincarnation, why does some happen right away and some don't? Another thought of mine is based on our soul circle as well. So like, for instance, my dad, he might not reincarnate because he's part of my soul circle. So he's waiting until the journey's complete. You know, so I might have to die and go back into the ether, and then I might have to wait there until my kids meet their demise, and until we're all together again in the same soul circle. Then we have the team all on the same playing field. Then they go, "Okay, what do you want to do now?" Right? It could be something like that as well. So they hang on for us and wait. Again,
So
no
many
evidence,
reasons.
just a theory.
Yeah, there's so many reasons, honestly. But this is interesting. Wu Rider says, "I've had two NDE, age 5 and 27, and I experienced a waiting place when I was 5, and a heavenly realm, and a void when I was 27. My answer to that would be, when you're 5, you're still at this age of innocence. You know, we haven't had time to I guess, get into a lot of mischief or make a lot of really bad choices. I'm wondering if that's why you experienced this void at that time.
Hmm.
That's a curiosity for sure, you know?
An interesting video I saw. It was a short one. It was just on the baby monitor kind of idea, right? And a young girl in a family, they just had a young baby boy, and she was so interested in this young boy, and she finally said to her mom and dad, you know, "Can I go and be with Thomas by myself for a few minutes? I really need to be with him on my own." And this is a little disturbing because they were like, "Well, I guess." And they were watching her on the monitor, make sure she was going to beat the kid to death, you know, because, oh, here comes competition, right? But she basically went over to the crib and whispered to the boy, said, "Thomas, you have to tell me what it's like to be with God because I've forgotten." And that was
Wow.
on a, I couldn't believe, that was, wow, that's really well. I've
Yeah.
forgotten what it's like. You know, little
Yeah.
babies comes out and it's like, "Oh, tell me what it's like."
It's just, that's the sad part of all of it, is the fact that we get sent back, and like somebody's got a sense of humor because they don't let you remember anything. But I think through meditation, you know, maybe hypnosis, past life regressions, things like that. I've been fortunate. I've been able to catch a lot of my past life through the years. And I'll tell you something, though. I think that it does somehow hinder us, because if you have a past life, there's a reason I think we can't remember. You have to cope with all the loves and losses and missing people. And, you know, I remember when I clearly had remembered, you know, one of my past lives, it was really difficult because I had loved this person I was with at the time very, very, very dearly. And that person came to me in a dream at my request, like in a vision. I said, I need to just, you know, one more time. And it was weird because I was on the outside, almost looking in, and I am looking down at him, but I'm watching him consoling me. So it must have been a past life thing upon his passing, and he's consoling me, this beautiful being of light. and I woke up a mess. And I wasn't right after that. I mean, I'm not right to start with, but I was less right. I had a really hard time. I felt like I went through that full grieving process again. And I'm thinking this individual realized that as well, because that was, was this one more time after that where there was any kind of contact. And it was all it was that was said was, "Don't forget me." And I'm just like, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" Like, I panicked, and that was the last time I ever had any sort of memory or vision or anything along those lines. So I think it would be so devastating to us to just repeat those losses and mourn those loves that just didn't come back this time, unless you're lucky enough to come back with the person that you had loved at some point. Very heartbreaking. So I get it last year, or I get it rather. Melissa, NDE last year, still trying to process it. I remember seeing some protection and some odd things I didn't understand. I felt loved and cared for, though, and it varies so much soul to soul. Yes, absolutely. We hear all about it. Just saying. I've said this before in my near-death experience, a beautiful forest and a cabin and a dog that I've never owned waiting. I know that when I walk into that cabin, this life is over. It's beautiful. I mean,
But at least you know that, that in its own right is comforting.
Yes, it's true. It's true. I mean, so much that we have to learn here. Every lifetime is a lesson. And if you don't learn the lesson the first time around, you come back again to learn the lesson. Yes. Once the lesson is learned, you move on to the next lesson. Yes.
Okay. Here's my point with this.
Okay,
Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much for that. So you've heard me say this quite a few times. It's like, and I always use the grading system. Okay. So yes. Right. So we have to learn a lesson. So I just finished grade 3. Now I'm born again into grade 4, and here I am. So I said, okay, so what's happening in grade 4? Well, you see, we can't tell you that. You're just going to have to learn that on your own. Well, how do I get by? Well, you'll bring forward what you learned in grade 3. Oh, great. I don't remember that. Well, that's because we took that away. Oh, well, what happens if I don't do well in grade 4? Well, then you won't pass. Then you'll fail, you see. Right? So you have to do well with the information that we've taken away from you. Best of luck. Oh, that's my issue with that system. I don't like it.
It's very difficult. I mean, there's just some things that, you feel it's like a bit of a cruel joke. But I think that, if we hang on to things and we don't work out our karmic things, then we end up at some point, either do it here or come back and do it again. If you want to just move on, then you work it out and realize, okay, it's a thing. It happened. It doesn't control me. I can't control what goes on out there, but I can control how I handle it. I can control how I move on from it, that sort of thing. So, and with that being said, we're at the end of the show.
What?
Any last words?
No, I just feel like I'm better than the sum of my parts, but I just can't remember exactly why I feel that way. I can't even remember my dreams anymore. They're just erased from me. Nothing. It's so bad.
Yeah. Well, I still got some pretty good ones, so I'm grateful for that. But few and far between. No, but I used to be a really big lucid dreamer. You have to understand, like I could lucid dream. I could stop my dream, like a pause. I could continue it. I could repeat it. I could go back and forth. If I said I want to go here, I would be there. I mean, I think having kids has ruined that for me because they suck out your brain cells. So it's got to be something to that.
There's truth on that. There's truth on that.
I love them, but I'm thinking my lucid dreams have never been the same since.
Well, I think it's because when we sleep, we have one ear open, right?
Well, you do. You don't really, you kind of like half sleep, But oh my God, this is always fun. And I'm already looking forward to the next one. So tomorrow night, guys, or tomorrow afternoon, I do want to again make mention Paranormal Insight. I will be joining Tim Sudano, 3 p.m. Eastern. Okay. It will be on the YouTube so you guys can catch it. It will also be on Rumble so you guys can catch it. So 2 different places, and it'll be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about time travel and time slips and really get into it. It'll be a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun to to hang out with. Thursday, I've been waiting for this. Bum, bum, bum. So I am welcoming for the very first time my very dear friends, team members, travel mates, Adriana Fiorastro, who's a fellow host here at UPRN, by the way, Negotiating Happiness every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Melissa McLennan. You've been watching her. She's been in the chat with us tonight. They've been with me now for close to 15 years, and they are probably well, then they have been a huge part of my paranormal journey. They've done events with me, filmed with me, done investigations with me. Again, we've traveled together. They're probably the closest people to me in my life, for all of this time, aside from obviously, people I live with, my family, but they are my family, right? And we're going to be talking about our trip out to Romania. We spent about 2.5, 3 weeks out there, and we've had some crazy things happen out there. But the one I've always been asked about the most has been Hoia Baciu Forest. And a lot of you guys have heard me talk about this on different, types of media platforms. Each one filmed one segment of Hotel Paranormal, right? With Melissa and I, and Adriana and I, of course, did Haunted Case Files, 2 different parts of the story. One was what happened to us in Romania, and the other one was what happened after Romania, because it has a very long reach. There's a reason it's called the most haunted forest in the world. It bumped out the suicide forest. Like, this stuff that goes on there is insane, literally insane. And this is going to be the very first time that the 3 of us are together in one place, one time, to talk about this incredible adventure that we had. And some of it was a lot of fun. It was all a lot of fun, but then there was others where we were just sort of like, what the hell just happened? It was one of those, right? So make sure you tune in for that. It's going to be a heck of a lot of fun, and we're really going to get into it. And, there should be some pictures and such to share, but it's a crazy, and it's that much more exciting when we can do it together, since we all participated and had the experiences. And thank you guys all for tuning in. Sorry, is a big troublemaker coming on Joe Montana anytime? I can always catch him on one of his shows, but he is a troublemaker for sure. But he'll be on. He'll be on. I keep trying to tell him to do one of the uncensored shows with me. We know how that will go, won't it? So we all know. We all know. So anyway, you guys are awesome. And big thank you to thank you. We do one of these every month. We've had 2 back-to-back, though, the last 2 weeks, but we do have them. And Wayne's always around, so you'll see
usually
him
around somewhere.
Yeah, you'll see him.
You can do my Joe Montaldo impersonation.
There we go. Yeah, well, she's expected to be back next week if she's feeling better. So fingers crossed. There we go. So everybody, big thank you to everybody in the chat room. You guys are awesome. Thank you all so very much. We appreciate you guys all so very much. I love your input. I love your stories. And that's why we lean on you. What do you think? We love it. Big thank you to United Public Radio Network, 105.3, 107.7. Big thank you to Folgers and Justin Snicker and Steve McGinnis. We appreciate you all so very much. So guys, again, please catch me on Paranormal Insight tomorrow, and we'll see you tomorrow night for the Outer Realm. Good night. Good night, everyone.